Hi everyone, it's Richard here from Site Skills. Now, as many of you know, I tend to wear a lot of different hats, and today I'm wearing my Joomla hat. Well, maybe not literally, but I do literally have the Joomla hoodie. You can get yours too if you're after some Joomla merch at the Joomla store. The topic of today's video is how to select a new Joomla template to power your Joomla site, or possibly how to select a template in the first place if you've not yet built your Joomla site. This topic came about because I've had a couple of recent support requests from our Beyond the Basics members. And they've asked me something along the lines of, can you have a look at my site because it just doesn't seem to look right and looks a bit amateurish. And what's happened, I suspect, is that they've had a template built either by themselves or by somebody else using a third-party template tool, which will remain nameless. So I've had to steer them in the right direction. And my direction for them was, look, it's probably going to be easier just to get a new template and configure it a little bit and then get going from there. You're going to end up with a much nicer looking result and solve all of those problems in the first place. And of course, their response then is, all right, well, where do I start with that? And I think my advice was probably pretty unhelpful because it was along the lines of, well, just go and find a template you like and install it and configure it and off you go. And so that's been playing on my mind a little bit because it's very intimidating, I guess, for a lot of people when there's so many templates out there as to know how to go through those to select something that's right for them. So that's what I'm hoping to set straight in this video. And it's one of those topics that I've been putting off until, coincidentally, this post appeared in my Reddit feed. The poster asks, how can I find the right template for me and what, I guess he means, should I expect from templates? I'm currently rebuilding my website by using Joomla for the first time and starting to feel comfortable with the functionality of the Joomla system. Great. So now I want to find the right look for my site. When Googling for Joomla templates, I find tens of sites with hundreds of templates each and I'm overwhelmed by the sheer mass of them. How do I find the right one for me? Do I look for functionality or formatting? Good question. Do colors matter, or are those easy to be changed later on? Also a good question. All good questions. So it got me wondering, is there a process to select a template? What factors should be considered when selecting a new template or if you're starting from scratch? And so what I've attempted to do is answer those questions in this video. Frankly, I don't think that there is a whole list that you can go through for every situation, but I do think that the criteria that I'm going to bring up in this video will help you to dramatically cut down the confusion that would come about by looking at all those templates. Okay, before we dive into this, there are a couple of questions that I should address first. And the first of those is, why not just get a dedicated template built from scratch? Sure, you can do that. It really just comes down to time and money. So all Joomla websites are powered by a number of files that collectively are known as the template. And many people, of course, are familiar with getting a template from a template provider, but you can instead get a template built from scratch. And this is a great solution because you end up with the exact website that you want. You don't have to find yourself making compromises. However, the cost involved in doing that is substantially more than buying an off-the-shelf template. You'll need to find someone who has web design skills, preferably somebody who also has a bit of an understanding of how Joomla works. And then you'll need somebody who can code that design into the appropriate files to create a Joomla template. So if you've got the budget and you've got the time, that is the ultimate way to go ahead. But if you don't, then you're left with getting an off-the-shelf template. The second thing to consider is, why not just use a page builder? Now, page builders have been with us for a few years now, but if you haven't come across this term before, I'll briefly try and explain. A page builder is an extension, and there are now a number of Joomla extension developers that have page builders available. This is a bit of a specialist topic that I'll reserve for a video in the future, but for now, they're an extension that's been designed to help the average person, i.e. not a designer, actually create a layout for an individual page. And that's where I think that page builders do have a useful purpose in designing individual pages that get beyond the standard sort of single column or two column layout. And you can get a fantastic looking page as a result. And I've used them. I think there is a purpose for them. A lot of people are very negative on page builders. I think you can go overboard though. There might be occasions where you use a page builder for an entire website. However, in most cases, I think they're best used for individual pages. Depends on the type of site that you're building. Nevertheless, even if you decide that a page builder might be a useful extension for the type of content that you wish to display, you'll still, in most situations, need some sort of template in the background. You'll certainly need some sort of template. Some of those page builder extension developers also have a very, very basic template that you use as a starting point for the page builder. So yes, you can use page builders. If you know what they are, great. If not, that's okay. That's not the purpose of today's conversation. So now let's talk about the next steps in getting or selecting an off-the-shelf template. Now, if you do already have an existing website, then one of the best things to do is just to go through your existing site and have a look at the sort of content that you've got there, particularly content that appears in modules and particularly modules on your homepage. Now, if you're not familiar with modules or template positions, then I encourage you to have a look at my free course, Joomla the Basics, which you'll find at learn.siteskills.com. It's did I mention it's free, course that I've had ongoing now for many years, and between my own site and YouTube, we've had over 50,000 people go through this course. It's a really quick way to get yourself up to speed on the basics of Joomla. In just about 2 hours, you'll have a really good overview. So you'll find a couple of lessons in there that talk about that. Now, if we have a look, say, at this existing website, it would be helpful to just give yourself a bit of a refresher about what content you've got on your various pages, particularly the home page. And one thing you can do is go into Administrator and navigate to Extensions, Templates. And then in the top right, click on the Options button. And on the Templates tab here, change Preview Module Positions to Enabled. Save that, go back to your front end. And then you need to add a parameter to the end of your homepage URL. So what I've got here, you can see, is the domain name followed by /index.php T for Tango, P for Papa equals 1. Index.php TP equals 1. Now, when I refresh that, you'll see that some frames come up around the various modules that are on this homepage, and the name of each module is there as well. And just scroll down and you'll get each module position that's available, including ones that don't contain any content. And this will just help to remind you of what's on your site and how many module positions that you might need as you go to select a new template. Now, when you've finished doing this, it's not essential. You can leave that feature on. It's not going to cause any grief, but for best security, turn that preview module positions back to disabled in Administrator and click Save and Close. Now, if you're not working from an existing site, you're starting from scratch, then what you need to do is a little bit of website planning. Again, that's a really advanced topic and something best discussed in another video, but briefly, you should have looked through your competitors' websites or other websites that you like and made a note of all the sorts of features that you would like to have on your own website, and perhaps roughly where those features are going to go, so that as you start to look through the available templates, it will help you to focus you down to a site that has the same sort of look and feel and content that perhaps you'd like to put on your own website. Then the next step is really, it is just a case of going out and looking for Joomla template providers. Now, there are, broadly speaking, two ways to do that. You can just Google Joomla templates and you'll find a whole bunch. You can also go to my site at buildajoomlawebsite.com and under resources, have a look for recommended templates. Now, full disclosure, some of these are affiliate links, and should you click on my links and purchase from some of these suppliers, I would earn an affiliate income. Thank you for that. I'm also conscious that this is starting to get a little out of date, and Joomla Art has gone around the world and tried to buy up everything and anything with the word Joomla in it. So this does need a bit of a refresh. Nevertheless, I still think this would be a really good place to start, because these are template providers that I am familiar with and that I'm comfortable will be able to give you a really good experience. Another option though, apart from just Googling or looking at this page, is to go to a template marketplace. There's several of those, and I'm going to use one called Template Monster for the purpose of the rest of this video, because they've got such a variety of templates. It's actually going to be really helpful for me to show you the sort of criteria that you consider as you go through that. Again, full disclosure, they have contacted me and asked me to highlight their site, which I've agreed to do in this video. I have not been paid for that, and everything that you hear is a genuine, sincere impression of what I think of their templates. So when you go there to Template Monster, you'll find a whole bunch of different things from WordPress to Joomla to Shopify. And if you have a look under CMS, you'll see that at time of recording, they've got well over 1,000 Joomla templates available, which, as we discussed earlier, is both a good and a bad thing, as there are so many choices. So I went ahead there and clicked on Joomla. I'm going to get rid of this little banner here for the moment, and really just start looking. Rather than just blindly going through all 1,000 Joomla templates to find the one that's right for you, let me try and help narrow that selection process so that you can quickly come across an appropriate template for your needs. I'll give you some general advice as well as some specific criteria. So to begin with, some general ideas, and the first of those is to beware of the template that is just a little bit too specific for a particular industry. Most templates have a reasonable amount of flexibility. However, you will occasionally come across some that have been so tightly designed to suit a particular need that you'll find that unless you happen to fit that need, they're not going to be flexible enough for your needs. And the one that you're looking at the moment, I think, is an example of that. If you happen to have a brewery, then this would be an excellent web template. In fact, I was really impressed with many of the templates that I found here at Template Monster, partly because I haven't had great thoughts about marketplaces before, but also because I did originally come across Template Monster a long time ago. They've been around a long time, and was sort of not exactly excited, but they've really come a long way. The people that are developing templates for them have really done a fantastic job. This is a great site, but probably not for you. So can you see that the way that content has been put into place, that unless you had very similar types of content, it would be quite difficult to swap those images and those text elements out. I don't know if you can see there, but there's even this little animated thing going on as I move my cursor across the page that you could probably turn off, but if you wanted to replace it with something else, I think that would be a tough one. You'd want to be a bit more of an advanced user before tackling a template like that, as opposed to the majority of templates like this one that have got quite a lot of flexibility. Now, even though at first look you might think, okay, this is designed for an advertising agency and I don't have an advertising agency, you need to see past that and ask yourself questions like, well, how difficult is it going to be to swap those images out? How would your current or proposed content fit in with this design? And I think there's a lot of flexibility here. You could replace that main image there with a whole lot of different things. Same goes for the links down the right-hand side there. They would be relatively easy to change for your content. And as I scroll down, you'll see that in these panels, the content tends to be more of a boxy layout. So it's likely that the images, or perhaps even video that you want to drop into there, is going to still work. I'll just continue to scroll down. There's this nice little parallax feature going on there, which again, you'd be able to swap that background image out for something else. And depending on what you do, you might find that this would be a suitable solution for you. The majority of templates are like this, where they have quite a bit of flexibility, but beware of the template that might be just a little bit too tailored towards a certain industry. Now, there are a number of ways that you can navigate the marketplace to find your template. One of the things that I like to do is look at bestsellers, which in this case can be found by scrolling down a bit and selecting bestsellers. And there's a good chance that your template will be found in this collection. As you go through these, ask yourself, well, why is this a bestseller? Does it contain the sorts of elements that you'll need to match the content that you want on your website? And as you go through there, you might see a particular color scheme that you like, or a particular layout. And then if something catches your eye, such as this one on the left for me, you can hover over it to get a slightly larger screenshot. And you then have a choice of looking at the details for the template, which I'll do now, as well as a live demo, which I'll do shortly. So as I come through to here, you can then see a larger screenshot. You can also see that there's a screenshot of what it would look like on a mobile device. But the real information is a bit further down the page. I'm looking for features. Now, to be fair, lots of templates do use very similar features. So ask yourself if you need any of those for your site. I'll come back to additional pages in a moment. But probably the most important one for a lot of people is, do you have the ability to change the default color scheme to something that suits more of your identity? In this case, the answer to that is yes. And if I scroll down, you can see also that you can change the fonts. That's again something that's pretty common these days amongst templates, but that's something that you want to check, as most people, oh, not most people, a lot of people want to change the default font that comes with the template. You also want to have a look at the demo. So once you tick off the fact that it's got all the necessary features, have a look at the actual live demo. You'll find a link to that up towards the top of the page. In this case, that opens a new tab. You've got the marketplace functions along the top here. You can hide those if you want to get them out of the way as well. But by default, it will bring up a desktop version of the site that you wish to preview, as well as this drop down, which you can get rid of there. Okay, so now we're looking at what the template looks like, and you can just scroll through and again ask yourself those questions. Will this suit the sort of content that you're hoping to achieve? There is something though about these live demos that you need to be aware of. The developers tend to create demos that show all the possibilities, and for a lot of people they struggle at this point because they think, but I don't need a site with all of that sort of content on there. And so you need to look beyond this and remember that you have control as to which modules appear and how many of those. There might even be occasions where you need more than what's displayed, and it's very likely that that's possible. So there's a big header section here, and if you don't want that, you can make that disappear and your homepage can start right there. You'd still have the navigation menu up the top, and you can start there. You don't have to have 3 of these. You could probably fit in more or less. That whole panel can be there or not. But again, ask yourself questions like, well, if we were to include that panel, what sort of icons would we be putting in there, and where would I be able to get those from? And do I have the skills to do that? So this is just an example of the sort of homepage that you can put together. Interesting. In this case, they've even integrated some e-commerce, a couple of recent blog posts, and then that's their footer section. Okay, I said that I would come back to particular pages, so now's probably a good time to talk about that. One of the limitations of CMS-driven websites is that you tend to be restricted to just one, what I call document type. That is, in Joomla's case, the Joomla article, which is made up of a title, the article content, plus a few other fields such as the publishing date and the end date and the author and so forth. That means quite often that you just end up with a big block of text, even for supporting pages such as about pages or team pages. And developers have become aware of that. And so what you're finding these days is that many templates that are coming out now have these extra designed pages. And this could be something that really makes the difference between an ordinary looking site and a great looking site. It turns out that the one that I selected here does have some of these extra pages. And to show you, let's have a look at their FAQ page. It's just going to take a moment for that to come up. What you're going to find is it's likely that what you're looking at is still a standard Joomla article page. However, it's been coded in such a way that it looks a lot more interesting than the standard big block of text and images. Okay, when I click on these FAQ headings, you'll see that they expand and collapse. Now, I might be wrong there. They might actually be using an extension to achieve that. But in either case, all of that would be supplied, most usually. You might need to check that. And as such, you will be able to replicate that functionality on your own site and get a really nice lot of internal pages. Let's have a look at a couple more of those. So here's a history page. Okay, so that's really quite special. It would be something quite difficult to achieve from a standard Joomla article if you didn't know how to code that correctly. Let's now look at one other, such as I like team pages. There we go. So you've got one row of photos, one row of text, 4 columns. So that's again a nicely laid out page. So something to look for as you're going through and selecting a template is whether or not the template includes these extra pages and whether or not that's relevant to the sort of content that you're looking to produce. Another piece of advice, which should sound pretty obvious, but it does come with a warning, is that you can use the categories down the left-hand side to try and find a template that suits the sort of industry that you're in. The warning though is that you shouldn't necessarily restrict yourself to this. A web design in the animals and pets category, for example, sure, could work really well for a vet, such as this one, but there's also nothing stopping you using this design for many other purposes as well. So this can be helpful to help narrow down the template that's going to work well for you, but at the same time, it might mean that you actually miss out on something that would be even better for you. So use it to begin with, but also remain open-minded. So there are some general things to consider as you're looking through various template designs. I'm now going to talk about some specific criteria. I've come up with 7. That's probably not the extent of the list, but I think these are the most important things that you should consider when you're looking for a template. And the first of them, I almost left off the list. It's responsive. The reason I almost left it off is because it's pretty much a given these days that the template will be responsive. However, I realise that you will probably stumble across some providers that are not all of their designs are responsive, and so this is something that you definitely want. And if you're not familiar with the term, responsive is the coding that allows a web design to change the layout based on the device that's viewing the site. Gosh, I hope that makes sense. Let me show you. So what we're looking at the moment is another desktop template. But if this were viewed on a tablet device, for example, it would look more like that. If it was on a mobile device, it's like this. As opposed to in the early days of mobiles, websites weren't responsive. And so basically all that happened was the website got all shrunk down to fit onto a mobile screen, which made it very difficult to read and often took longer to load than it should. So your template absolutely must be responsive. More importantly though, it's worthwhile to actually have a look through what the site would look like when it's going to be viewed on a mobile. And rather than try to mess about with your web browser to simulate that, Template Monster and others often will give you an actual preview on the screen, as is the case here. In this case, the menu goes up the top. One thing to check is that you can actually get to all of the items in the menu. That last one's just chopped off until I scroll down. So yes, it is possible to access everything there. We can see that there's a search that's been put up the top. And then as I scroll through the home page of this, the content appears as you can see. And so just go through what the site's going to look like, really in all 3 modes, but in particular, the mobile mode, to make sure that it is responsive and that you're happy with the layout. Criteria number 2 is to consider whether or not you need a one-page design. Now, you've no doubt come across websites like this, the sites where all of the content of the site is contained on one page, clearly the home page. And some people like that, many people don't. I guess the advantage of such a site is that you're able to display everything to your visitors all on one page without them needing to click through to another page and waiting for that page to load. The downside perhaps might be that you need to make compromises because you might not be able to display as much content as you'd like. So what you're looking at is an example of one of those. And when you click in the menu, you're taken to the same page, but further down the page, or depending where you click, further up the page, and you can still manually scroll as well. So this very much is a personal preference, but if you decide that you would like a one-page design, clearly you're going to need to find a template that's been coded that way. But can I suggest, if you do decide to go this way, that you still look for a template that allows you to create internal pages as well. There may well be occasions where you think, look, there's just an extra bit of information I've got to put somewhere. And you might find that the template is coded in such a way that it's not possible to do that. The nature of Joomla and the fact that these have been around a while now, I suspect that you won't hit that scenario, but it's important to just check. As it happens, the one that I've picked here, under the About link, you can see that there are in fact some supplementary internal pages available as well. So that gives you the best of both worlds then, the one-page homepage with the ability to create additional internal pages as well. So if you need a one-page design, go and look for that feature in the marketplace or at the web developer's site. Okay, criteria 3 is the main navigation menu. Where is it positioned and how does it function? What you're looking at the moment is what I'll call a very conventional drop-down menu system. It's at the top of the page. As you hover, you might get a color changing. There's a drop-down facility here of at least 3 levels of navigation. and then conventional links along the top here. This is by far the safest and most common type of menu system that you'll find on all websites, including Joomla powered websites. And for most of you, this is probably what you're going to want to look for. Just make sure that there is a drop-down facility available. Most templates that you'll find these days have got this facility, unless you don't need it, unless you've just got very few links on your site. But in most cases, you want to just be able to check that it in fact does have a drop-down feature. A couple of other options though you might want to consider if you're looking to create more of an arty site, or if your audience is a little bit more web savvy, I guess I'll put it, then you could go for something like this where it's more of a visual design and the menu's hidden. There's pros and cons to this. The good thing is the menu doesn't interrupt the rest of the design of the site. It's a hamburger menu style that you see up the top left here that you and I are probably familiar with, but your website visitors might not necessarily realize that there is a menu there. I'll just click on that to show you that this pops out, and it's then got a very functional and conventional menu at the left. I'd be a little bit concerned going this way though if you've just got general everyday website visitors who just might miss that fact. I know hamburger menus have been with us for a while, but from a usability point of view, they can still cause problems. So consider that. I wanted to show you a third example as well. This, at first glance, looks like a conventional drop-down menu, but like there. But you'll see that there's a couple of menu options where there's a lot more detail displayed in the menu than simple links. And this is what's commonly known as a mega menu, where you can add additional content to your menu. It can be really helpful, particularly on e-commerce sites where you need to pack in lots of different categories or additional information. So if you want that specific function, you'll need to look for a template that has it. That said, you can often get third-party extensions to add to existing sites to be able to give you that same sort of functionality. But as we're talking about building a site from scratch or possibly replacing your existing template, if you want that feature, go looking for it. Here's what it looks like under Shop in this particular example. So you can see that there's a number of different types of content that you can put into a mega menu. I also recommend that if you're after this, you do have a look at what the site looks like in mobile view. So I showed you this earlier. If we switch to mobile here, you can then see that it does revert to a hamburger menu. Let's have a look at that mega menu, for example, under About. There we go. So that same content displays there, and the visitor needs to scroll to see all of that. So there are some things to consider when choosing a template in terms of the menu position and the menu functionality. The next criteria, number 4, is the home page feature panel. And this is the section of your home page right up the top where we want to ideally get your visitors to perform your most wanted response. What do you want people to do when they arrive at your website? Is it to pick up a phone and make a phone call, as in this example that you're looking at right now? Or is it to fill out a form? In that case, this homepage feature panel should have either the form itself or a link to a pop-up that displays the form, or a link to an internal page. As this is such a crucial part of your overall website design, it really is worthwhile spending some time thinking about what this panel should look like and what sort of content it should contain. Now, I often talk in business terms, and I appreciate that many of you aren't building a business website, but you can still ask yourself the question, what do you want visitors to do when they arrive on your website? And then that's what that main section of the page should be about. So I'll show you a couple of examples of that. The one you're looking at now is a very typical sort of homepage design. You can see too that there are arrows that allow the visitor to bring up a different panel. There's a couple of those. Let's have a look at another example of that. This is kind of similar. In this case, there's just a headline and 2 call to action buttons. And if that's all you need, that's a great example. However, I'm just going to point out something here. There are additional slideshow screens here, but they're not obvious. And so if you need that feature, you need to be looking for a template where the little navigation arrows are quite obvious. They actually only came on when I hovered over the picture. And they don't automatically rotate, although that's often a setting that you can change. So there's a couple of examples of home page panels. Here's something that's quite different. If you don't have a business site and you just want to display some interesting content up there, then there might be a different type of template that's better suited for that. In this example, it's quite obvious that there's different navigation options there, and there's no content on top of the artwork to get in the way. So again, it really just comes down to the type of content that you want on your site, as well as what your purpose is for building a website, as to what sort of design you choose with that home page feature panel. The next criteria, number 5, is closely related to the previous one, and this is the homepage layout. Now that we've looked at the homepage feature panel, let's look at the rest of the homepage. And this one kind of contradicts a little bit what I said earlier when I was saying don't think too much about what the developers put onto the design, because you can, of course, swap and change the elements that are there. But at the same time, clearly, if there is one design that has a nice layout that suits what you're hoping to do, that's going to save you a lot of time having to swap and change. And this is really where it does vary quite dramatically. So with this first example that I'm showing, you can see that the feature panel pretty much takes up the whole of the first part of the page, followed by a panel where this is where you could push people into other areas of the site without turning this into a marketing lesson. One thing that you should consider if you're building a business site is that you might have many segments to your market. And so it's a good idea fairly early on to be able to show the different segments that you cater to, and then push those different segments into different parts of the page or site. And so just keep those types of things in mind as you go through the home page. Are there elements here that will suit your type of content well? If so, you could probably save a lot of time and grief by choosing a template that already looks very close to what you were hoping to achieve. There's one example. Here's another very different one. Same to begin with, it's got a very large panel up the top there. You'd need to consider, well, you'll need to replace that image most likely with your own. And do you have an image that's quite wide that will suit that panel area? This next panel is a little bit of text with a call to action. Do you have an image that could drop in there easily? And then maybe another call to action panel there. Then we're getting into more of a gallery type thing. So you need to find a balance, I guess, between understanding that you are not restricted by what you see in the demo, but at the same time, that could help you quite a lot when it comes to making that decision. Also, although you should have a quite strong idea what you want on your site and pages at this point, sometimes buying an off-the-shelf template can be helpful in your planning phase, because if you don't know yet exactly what you want on your site, you can often get inspiration by looking through the various demos. Let's have a look now at another one. I looked at this one earlier briefly, and so here you've got quite a lot of content up in that feature panel. And in this case, 3 different main sections there. And what I quite liked about this one is that it's an example of having a different footer. So footers tend to be very similar in that you've just got quite often a background color with your contact details and perhaps an additional navigation. But in this case, there's a big feature image and just a smaller column off to the left. Kind of feel like I need to keep saying this. Again, don't be restricted by what you see necessarily, but the homepage layout is definitely a criteria that you need to consider when you're looking for your template. Okay, we're almost there, 2 to go. This is number 6. There's still a couple of really important considerations, and I don't think any are more important than this, and that is the logo, position, and layout. Because this is an area where if you don't consider this before choosing a template, you might even find that the logo that you want to put there just doesn't suit it or looks really stupid. One of the problems, I guess, with a demo site is that the developer can make it look perfect to suit their content. But with certain designs, you'll find that if you're trying to stick in your existing logo, it just ends up making the rest of the template look a little bit disjointed. In this example, it may well be the case if you have more of a stacked or vertical or portrait type logo, that won't really fit that space well. It will either push the rest of the menu out, or the logo will end up having to be really tiny. That might not be the case. The template may have had that the template developer may have considered this before finishing off the coding, but as I look at it now, I can't picture how a vertical style logo design is going to suit that well. Here's a completely different example. There was a time where all web designs, when it came to logos, were the same. The logo would go up the top left, followed by the navigation. I'm starting to see more and more sites now breaking that trend and positioning the logo in the center, like this one. Really, it's just a case of personal preference. The logo will tend to jump out a little bit more where it's positioned in this example. If that's important to you, then I guess that's a consideration. I personally tend to think the logo is far less important than the content, so I'd rather stick it out of the way. The advantages, though, of a design like this is that it will suit a wide range of logo designs and colors. Whether it's more of a landscape, portrait, stacked or stretched out design, it's going to fit that space really easily. Pretty much the same comments can apply to this one. It's very similar in that it's been centered, it's above the navigation. So again, that's a different style that you'd need to consider. This one though is a bit more like the first example in that the first thing I look at is, well, the designer's chosen a real box type layout. Does that mean if I've got more of a landscape logo, it's still going to fit in there? Does the box stretch to fit the space? Or will my logo end up being really tiny in that box that's applied? This is an occasion where you might want to jump into the live chat, in this case with Template Monster, before committing to buying the template so that you can confirm that it does have the flexibility to suit the logo that you're looking at. This is a really important one, so keep in mind your logo, or if you don't yet have a logo, the prospective logo that you're going to put into place before choosing your template. I'll get to number 7 in just a second. If you've enjoyed this video so far, please be sure to hit the like button below. And if you'd like more videos to teach you how to build better websites, be sure to subscribe as well. I'm also putting some videos together on how to start a web design business, as well as how to grow an existing web design business. So if you want to turn your web design skills into a profitable business, be sure to subscribe now. The final criteria that I chose, number 7, is the boxed versus fluid design. So this is just a design feature, and so it's mostly subjective as to which way you should go, personal preference. The example that you're looking at first of all is one of a boxed design. There's a defined margin to the left and right of the content, and the content fits within those margins. As I scroll down the page, you can see that everything appears within that portion, and as such, there's a big white space off to the left and the right of the content. That's perfectly fine, but there is an optional way that you can go, and that's the fluid design, where the content will actually stretch to a point to fit the full browser width that's available. As I scroll down here, you can see that there's a large photo panel there. And then each of the panels as we go through has a color or a background that stretches to fit the full width of the browser. Now I said that this was mostly a subjective decision and therefore it's just up to you which way you prefer to go, but I will just add a comment. If I go back up to the top, you can see that for this to work, you will occasionally need large images to be able to fit into these full width panels. And not everybody has those images, and not every website is best suited to use images like that. So another consideration as you go through and choose your template. Hey, I really hope that you found the information in that video useful and that now you're able to narrow down those hundreds of choices into just one, your next Joomla template. You'll find some links below to some of the resources that I spoke about. Keep in mind that all of the templates that I featured in this video are available from Template Monster, and I sincerely hope that you include them on your shortlist of template providers. As a result of putting this video together, I realized that it would be a really helpful thing to create some more information for those who want to understand how to update and configure a template yourself. And so I've decided to put a mini course together, which you'll find at learn.siteskills.com. It's called Update Your Joomla Template, and you can either buy it on its own or as part of our Beyond the Basics Joomla training bundle. If you happen to be watching this and you're already one of our members, this will be added automatically to your bundle once it's ready. Right now, at time of recording in early February 2019, I'm just putting it together. You can jump in and grab it now though, if you wish. In the curriculum, you'll see that there's a step before the topic that I've talked about today, which is preparing your website, making sure it's backed up, and then restoring the site somewhere else or creating a staging site if that's available with your web host. You then select the template as instructed in this video, install it, configure it. You then need to make some changes to all of your modules to work with the new template. There might be some styling issues to consider as well. Some extra bits and pieces. Then of course the last step, the most important one, which is to launch your new site so that everything goes smoothly. So if that's something that interests you and you want to avoid all of the grief in trying to work all this stuff out yourself, I am putting this course together to make this as smooth as possible. And the way I'm doing this is actually with a real live working website. It's not any theory involved in this. You'll actually look over my shoulder and see the steps as I create them with a real working website. So thanks again for joining me this time, and I look forward to you joining me in the next video.